Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Manifest. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, so first and foremost, we obviously having Ben feel guilty about the whole Vance situation. It's like, I'm the one that kind of dragged him into this, so it's up to me to get him out. But Grace, it's like, you can't really be doing that because you're like, you barely got out last time, and there's no real way to know, like, if you can really help her and do anything under those circumstances. And then almost, miraculously timed, we had the government showing up asking a whole bunch of questions like, were you there? Like, we think that you were doing, like, what are you up to? Because obviously he can't let them know that Vance is alive, because they also don't know who in the government they can trust, because obviously the Major was able to do what she was able to do, so she has connections and trustworthy allies, people who believe in her cause. So even though she's not around right now, or potentially not anymore, once again, we don't know what her circumstances might be, which, now that I'm talking about, I wonder, did she get... like I said, I don't remember the season 2 finale all the way through, but and this might have been something I said at the time, and maybe there was stuff hinting to it, but the fact is that no one's found her body. Like I said, I don't think that was like a disposal job. I think either, she's labeled as a Jane Doe somewhere, or she got resurrected at the same time. I think that was my thought. And I don't remember what I said during the season 2 finale. I think something... either that was just a random thought I had, but I think there was something in my head thinking that maybe she got resurrected just like they did. Maybe not. I don't, like I said, don't remember all the ins and outs of the season finale. I didn't rewatch it in between last episode and this episode, nor do I remember all that I said during the season 2 finale. But regardless, that's kind of where my thought is right now. It's like, maybe she got resurrected, because I'm just thinking, like, in 3 months, that hasn't come up. Her mom's just missing, so it's probably like, she's probably keeping that low-key, because it's probably like, oh, they think I'm dead, so I'm gonna let them think I'm dead. Well, to be fair, the only person that thinks she's dead is Sanvi, and maybe she thinks Sanvi's gonna break apart, like, knowing, like, oh, she killed me, she's gonna, like, be riddled with guilt, and she's gonna make sloppy mistakes, and that's gonna be our opportunity to strike. She might even try and use that to her advantage by, like, pretending to be the ghost that haunts Sanvi to a certain extent. Could play something off like that. We'll see. Once again, just easily be me reading too much into a situation, because like all I just said could be completely wrong, because it's like, oh yeah, like clearly this happened in the season 2 finale, so that it'd be like, oh, that completely erases the possibilities of this stuff I brought. Once again, I don't remember everything that went down in the season 2 finale, so I could be completely off base here. But nevertheless, keeping it up with like, well, we can't let the government know what's up. We also have Michaela getting her job. I love that, like, oh, she's at her desk and Jarrett drops off a file. It's like, yeah, I got this case. I was like, but then Michaela gets distracted because the 3, as she just refers to them as the 3 meth heads. It's like, she got a video from someone, like someone who was investigating the waters for her. Like, there's a video they want to send over, which she's also got to talk to her captain about. Hey, so... oh, you're fighting for me to get my job back? Cool. But I promise I'll follow the rules. If I'm going to be sticking around, no more doing all the stuff that she was doing in season 1 and season 2, just disappearing, anonymous tips. It's like, okay, so you got to follow things by the book now. She wants to keep her job. Try to keep things, I think for her too, it also going by the books also probably plays a role in keeping her job as normal as possible, without, obviously, because a lot of the calling and 828 stuff ends up flowing into her job regardless. But obviously her and Drea are looking at the video, and it turns out, hey, we see our 3 quote-unquote meth heads just strolling out of the water. So morning, Ben and Grace, they're packing up, because it's like, what do we do? Like, the thing is, wait, they've been going for 84 days. It means we just have to wait them out 84 days and they're going to die again. But it's like, we got to put Cal somewhere that he's off grid. And Grace brings up her stepdad's place, but it would involve talking to her stepbrother Tariq, which they're not on the best terms. Apparently they haven't talked in 10 years, which I think that's so interesting, because prior to now, obviously we've only really seen Ben's side of the family. Obviously his dad, obviously his mom's gone, but obviously him and Michaela, like, they're being the biggest focus. But it's like, we haven't really touched on Grace's side of the family at all. So I think that's going to be something we get kind of dabble into this season potentially, especially the relationship she has with her brother. Which is interesting, because I think it's kind of reflective, because Olive and Cal were kind of a little awkward in season 1. I think they found their rhythm and flow later in season 1 and in season 2. So I think maybe it's time for like Tariq and Grace to have theirs, because they don't really go into details about what went wrong. Ben had made a reference of like sometimes it's a situation where despite the complications, like, you know, sometimes you have disagreements with families or something like that, and but you still love them. And it's like your mom loves her brother a lot. He's the only brother she has. But I'm wondering what it was that went down between them that led to such a disagreement, you know? Why there's kind of bad blood to the point that he's like, oh, you know, family's supposed to be there for each other, right? Well, wrong, because he's like, you weren't there for me when I needed you. It's like you were so preoccupied taking care of your family, but I was family too. You just said it yourself. I'm your only brother. So whatever circumstances were, she didn't help him out of like a tight spot that he needed her help, and probably made. So, I mean, obviously it's interesting too, because obviously the callings are about healing a lot of old wounds, and maybe inadvertently this has been another wound that needed to be healed. It might be a thing of Cal needs to be here because this is where he's meant to be. Maybe this is where Grace and Eden are meant to be as well. So it's interesting, you know, skipping around a little bit. The fact is that they're the only ones at Tariq's, you know, maybe that's how things were meant to play out, you know, destiny, whether it's also like how much of your life is actually in your control and just how much is, you know, playing out by someone's playbook, you know, type of situation. So just something kind of interesting to think about. But obviously, as Ben's focusing on the Vance situation, you have Olive helping Angelina with her callings, which I think is very interesting because obviously she's helping out her brother, but she's also, you know, she helped out TJ and everything last season. So I think it's very befitting that she's helping out Angelina this season. But that's because obviously for Angelina, she brings up like her parents thought like her callings, her visions were like the fact is that she would be the reason, that she'd be the herald for the end of days type of thing. It was like, oh, they went like full blown biblical, like with what they thought was going on. And, you know, obviously she's been having this one over and over again. So Olive decides it's going to be up to her, you know, to help. And I thought it was actually this heartbreaking moment where Grace was like, so we're splitting up. She's like, the last time this family split up was 7 years ago. And Ben's trying to reassure her, but like, that's not going to happen. And she has to be like, well, this is goodbye. And it's like, you know, we'll see each other soon. But obviously with the way things play out this episode, who knows when it is they're going to be able to be together as a family without there being issues. But obviously Olive is able to help Angelina unravel the, you know, the archangel she saw in her dream, or her calling, and it being faceless and obviously shattering into like colored glass. So they go to like a school / church and end up digging up like a time capsule she made, and in it there was a picture of her when she was younger, and they went to that same smoothie spot and dropped the picture, which at the same time, once again, just the connections. Once again, it's like, this is one of those conspiracy, like, I mean, well, to be fair, Ben already has one. I was about to say, it's like one of those things where you have a conspiracy board, you have red lines, everyone's like, no, Ben already has that. I forgot there's already a character who legitimately does that already. So it's not like you even have to, like, make a joke of, you know, almost like a murder board, but more a mystery board. But it's like, yeah, Ben already has one. I forgot about that. They were literally looking at it last episode, but I let that slip my mind. It's just interesting how the connections run deep, because our three criminals, obviously you have Pete being like, we should just stop, because it's like, for one, you know, people thought we were dead, and yeah, you know, the cops after us, but we just tried to firebomb her. The fact is, like, everything we did, like, we have a second chance at life. It's like, he tries to, like, appease to Jace's good nature, in the sense that, like, Jason's like, you know, all the money you spent on me and Corey just to make sure we had, like, I think, you know, that we were taken care of, showing that he can be someone that cares. It's like, but I think it's like when life kind of beats you down and you're just so used to kind of, you know, making ends meet. Like, I think just doing whatever it takes to survive, you start crossing more and more lines, doing more horrible and horrendous stuff. So he's kind of making it seem like, no, it's okay, it's all good. But then immediately, the moment they stop, he's like, oh, I used to work here, so I know the combination to the safe. I'm probably just gonna break in there. And Corey and Pete are like, really, you're just gonna roll up with a knife broad daylight? It's like, Jace is not in the right mind state. So, but then, like, at the same time, which, you know, I was talking about a little bit earlier, we had the whole Tariq situation. We had Cal talking to him and saying, like, go to her, you know, trying to push his uncle to, like, talk to his sister. But at that moment, it's like, it resonated with Pete. Like, Pete, Corey, and Jace all heard it, but Pete's the one that kind of listened to it, because he picks up the picture and he's like, wait, there was something there. So when he gets arrested later on, they, you know, Olive and Angelina return, and it turns out, wait, Pete's actually in the picture because obviously we see a younger him and Jace because Jace actually worked there, but the Pete boy that's looking at her looking at Angelina in the picture is Pete. So it's like, once again, this connection, because at first you're kind of like, oh, the fact is that they came back, like they're such a sinister presence for Cal that they were represented by the shadows, and it's almost like because Michaela did what she did, it led to their circumstances being what they are, them coming back and everything. So maybe coming back put them on the right path, whereas they were the danger that they eventually ended up being. But now that they're back, maybe they're a part of this too. So now they're the quote-unquote good guys. At the very least, they're new cogs in this machine. Maybe not. Once again, you don't know like whether you're just like reading things for what they really are, or you're reading too much into them. You kind of never really know 100% with this show. So I'm wondering, is it a possibility that all three of them have a part to play in this now, not as just bad guys, but as good guys? Or is it just because Pete was the most reserved about it that maybe him and eventually Corey as well will kind of side with this, where Jace kind of goes off and continues to be like evil? I mean, because that's also the conversation. It's like, right, this wouldn't be the first time bad guys were brought back to life. Home Dude was a serial killer not serial killer, but a murderer. Big distinction. He was a murderer, and he got, not last season, but season 1, Home Dude got resurrected as well. So it's not like this whole situation, there's no like moral scale to it. It just, I don't know. And even then, once again, it's the thing of like there's no accidents, there's no coincidence. Everything happens for a reason. There's connections there. Now, whether, it's the characters or us as the audience who not necessarily being able to 100% connect a lot of those dots yet. So I thought that was fascinating. But also realizing there's a connection between Angelina and Pete like that. Maybe that could be a point of, like I said, a point of redemption for Pete to kind of turn things around, like I said, because maybe he was already on that route. Once again, maybe Corey will be on that route, and maybe Jace is going to be the one that's teetering, or maybe Jace is full-blown like, oh, I'm going to make things better. Like, he might come out doing some heroic or helpful stuff in the end. Like, maybe this is their second chance to do things right. They become a part of something much bigger than themselves. So maybe they're going to be kind of good guys. Like I said, the way they were playing it up last season made it seem like they were bad guys, but maybe that was prior to them dying. Now that they've died and come back, they've got, we see that if you can follow the callings and lead up to a certain point, you can be saved like Zeke. But even then, we don't know what the ramifications are for that, because obviously Sanvi's kind of working overdrive and everything, and Zeke picks up on it. She's like, how is it that you picked up on something that all these other people have been around me have not noticed it, but somehow you were able to kind of pick up on it instantly? He's like, I don't know. And it's like, we know that last episode too, like Michaela's like, how'd you know I was in trouble? He's like, I don't know, I just felt something. So it's like, whatever's there, he's no longer getting the callings, but it might be that connection isn't, like I said, it's not like completely severed. Like maybe he leveled up. It's like all the callings are just the beginning. Now you've entered stage 2 or level 2, and now you're able to kind of like, maybe rather than getting that, you have this empathic connection to all the other passengers. It might be something like he might be more on the level of where Cal is to a certain extent, but to be fair, Cal's still got the death date and everything too. So like I said, maybe Zeke's just on that next level that no one else has reached yet, and maybe him being on that level kind of makes him special. Like I said, it seems like it's bubbling. Whatever it is, like, coming back, no longer having that marker that represents the death date, like whatever the case that might be, it's changed something in him. To what extent, we won't know, but I think we're seeing it rising up a little bit. The bubble, like I said, the bubbling of whatever these circumstances are. I'm really interested to find out like what that means for him in the grand scheme of things. And speaking of Sanvi, obviously for her, she's worried about all this, because obviously for Zeke, it's not just like, oh, like any frostbite damage from nearly freezing to death. It's like no health issues at all. So he's got like a complete clear bill of health. But obviously got Sanvi worrying, because for her, it's like no one knows that since she took the cure, she hasn't had any callings. Like, it seemed like that was kind of bothering her last episode, but she didn't say anything. But now she's opening up to Zeke about it, because it's like, if following the callings is the means to getting rid of the death date, then what can I do when I don't have the callings? It's like, well, just keep doing what you're doing. Hell, even Ben saying this on her, don't worry, we're gonna, we have to be careful. The major might find out about us. And somebody's like, yeah, like, oh, yeah, right. Can't let anyone know that you kind of killed her and everything. Not kind, you straight up killed her. Obviously, it was an accident. You unintentionally killed her, so that's weighing on her as well. But she's juggling a lot. But I think it's also because you're working overdrive, because you're trying to compensate for the fact that, I think, trying to make up. I think for her, she's probably thinking like, okay, if I do enough good, then that kind of makes up for the fact is I can't see the callings. But if I'm doing enough good, then maybe what happened to Zeke will happen to me too. But also, it's also about making things kind of better, trying to balance the scales. If we kind of use the Archangel in this particular episode about the scales and everything, like maybe she's trying to balance the scales a bit more by compensating for the life that she took when it came to the general, that maybe by compensating she thinks, like I said, can balance the scales a little bit more in her favor, to kind of make up for what she did. So Michaela's in her captain's good graces too after handling everything, because it's like, oh, just give, because obviously you had Angelina wanting to keep the picture because it was sentimental for her, because the whole point was it reminded her of good times. Obviously, it's like, considering everything that's going on, it reminded her, like, for her, it's like, yeah, this was a time when my parents were at least semi-normal, and to think, like, I would have never thought all these years later that my parents would do what they did, locked me up like that. I mean, being betrayed by the people that are meant to protect you, it can't be the easiest thing at any point, at any age. But I think, she needed... It's just interesting how that worked out like that. So, like, that picture holds a lot of value in that regard of, like, it reminded her of better times, that, she was happy that she can be happy again at some point. But Michaela had to take it because it's evidence, and doesn't want to take the chance of losing her job, because her job helps her deal with a lot of the calling-related stuff. So I gotta, stay on top of all this. So I gotta follow the rules, which ultimately it all works out because she's able to get the photo back anyway. So it's no longer, the evidence has been kind of logged. Plus the captain's like, yeah, Drea ended up telling me how important it is to somebody. So... Also, it's like, so do you have any ideas about where these three have been the entire time? It's like, I just have theories, but Captain, you prefer, actual facts. So, yep, I'll keep you in the loop about that. So, once again, just kind of on the up and up. It's like, yep, as long as I keep things straightforward and don't go too off the beaten path with my job, I got to keep it, I'm still probably under the captain's watchful eye. If I screw up too much, I'm going to end up losing my badge. So, got to play this by the book. But ultimately, at the end, she ends up finding the other case that Jarrett was trying to bring to her about. Oh, and she sees it's the general. So that's interesting. Once again, she knows what the general looks like, right? Once again, I can't remember if that's just Vance, Ben, and Sanvi might be the only ones. I don't know if they let the rest of the Stone family know what she... So that might be a thing of even Michaela might... Like I said, I don't remember. I don't know if they let her know about that, or even like, I would assume they would have let the others know about the general's name. Like, it has to, I would assume she knows. So she had this look almost like, but it wasn't like I don't know. It didn't look like a look of like, oh my God, I can't believe, the general's case. It just seemed like, someone's, like I said, I could have like been kind of not reading as much into that as I should have been. The expression didn't read like, oh my God, but like I said, could have easily been misreading that. So, as for the Vance side of things, obviously Ben had to go visit Vance's wife and kind of explain everything. Hell, even Vance's right hand dude was like, oh yeah, like I'm glad he told you to do it and not me. And obviously, like the message on the ring eventually leads him to Vance's grave, because it's like, yeah, everyone who loves him knows what that message is. The truth will set you free and everything. Like, it's written on his grave, and he heard that message from Powell. So it's like, does Powell know? It's like Powell didn't know. He had a feeling. Turns out to be true. So Ben has no choice but to kind of confide in him that, yep, he's alive, but he's in Cuba. Let's not go into details how he got there, but there could be government interference. It's like, well, considering Vance's supposed to be dead and he's been working off the grid for a year and a half, they're going to look at it as a thing of like, oh, he was a spy, like he was up to some shady stuff, so they won't act on that part. But what if, I'm thinking maybe they're going to try and skew it by Ben being like, if I offer something else in return, something big, will they make that move? And he offers them the Telfin. It's like, if it's something related to 828, it has to be something, it's going to be something, it's important. But he's like, I'm going to do my best to keep this hush-hush, but this is 828. It's the biggest mystery in human history currently, modern human history. So it's like, we need to, we need to keep it quiet, sure, but will I be able to? It's going to be a whole other thing. But Ben gives him the Telfin regardless, and to get a message about, Vance, So, and obviously Ben lets Vance's wife know what's what. But at that moment, the news break about the Telfin and everything, and now their lives go back to being, you're under the camera, you're under scrutiny again. So now the situation is that Ben can't, the family can't be reunited because it'll lead them straight to Tariq's, and obviously the whole point is to send Cal away so he's off the radar, so those guys don't eventually come back for him. We also saw, once again, they've seen it firsthand just how people getting caught up in this mystery, like the conspiracy theories of it, both the people who look at them as a positive light and those like last season who look at them as kind of something, an abomination, something to hate. Like, we saw a lot of that last season, obviously, so we can probably end up getting even more of that now that it's that fever, there's almost a fever pitch of it now, even more so, because it's like, right, they've also got this thing publicly known like this. So, at the same time, there's also like the sample that Sanvi took from Ben's hand, but it only reads as like metal from the plane, nothing abnormal. But as she's leaving, it starts glowing. I was like, oh, is it because of the darkness? But it's like, no, it was kind of already dark in there, and there's still kind of lights on. But it seems like Ben's hand is also resonating, because I guess because the Telfin is close at hand now, it's in the same country. So that's what I'm thinking is so interesting. Because before, when he touched it the second time, nothing happened. But I guess like the moment, all he had to do was touch it once, and it kind of he left an imprint, and it kind of left an imprint on him. So I guess it's like showing like now that it's in close proximity, maybe this is going to have an effect on all of the passengers, and that he's going to be kind of the key focal point now. I think his closeness to Cal, I think, also plays a role in that, because once again, Cal's the center of this gigantic and complicated spider web that is this mystery. So a lot of moving pieces, a lot of angles to this. I'm really curious to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.